Stop transcription. Okay. Excited for everyone to join us for week 2 of our preseason training for Sugarbush Ski and Ride School. Tonight, Tom Mulligan, Two Guns, is going to present, and I won't preview what he has to talk about. I won't spoil it. I'll just let him jump right in. Take it away, Tommy.
Sweet. Thanks, Joey.
Yeah.
Everybody hear me all right? Thumbs up if you're on the screen there. Sweet. So there'll be a lot of me talking today, but to start this off, there'll definitely be some interaction. So if you have your phone ready or can kind of click away on the your laptop there, I'll put the link to be able to go to that as we go through it there. But yeah, so that's the lead off here. I've taken a few topics and ideas that we talked about last week. So it's not necessarily building off of last week, but it's just kind of touching on some stuff. So don't worry if you missed last week or anything about that. But it's kind of one of those things that I'm definitely rusty at this every time I start the year. And it's definitely one of those things I think I've been stale at. So as we go through, maybe y'all will be able to share some stuff with me as we go. And I know you don't want to look at me the whole time, so let's see. How do we screen share this sucker, Joey? You have to give me control.
Do I have to give you permission? I hope not. Is there a share button right next to the leave button?
Oh, there is. All right. Do you guys see a screen? Not my face? Hot diggity dog. I think I could just hit my space bar and we'll get going. But my thought was making a connection. And if you're looking at the learning connection model, we're going to be talking about our decisions and instructors, and then how that's going to affect the teaching skills and the people skills. We're going to be pretty focused on the student and people. And then our goal is to bring that in to how that can make our teaching a little bit easier. So if your phone's ready and you can scan a QR code. How do I? Yeah. All right.
Try the left and right arrows or try a mouse click.
I had to click screen. All right. If you have that, you can scan the QR code. Great. Do that. I'm going to do the same. And you should see a question. And the first question I have is, how do you think your student feels when you meet them? And I'm putting in some answers too. I've only ever used this as a participant, so it's my first time using it as somebody going. Did you all submit your answers and it's waiting? Hold on.
Are we writing?
Oh, sorry. Mute us.
Sorry, technical difficulties on my end. All right. Well, it was a good idea while I had it, so I do apologize.
Did you?
But if anybody's not on mute until I can get this running, How do you think your student feels when you meet them? Anybody can shout out an answer.
Excited?
Yeah, I definitely wrote that down. What else?
I'm
Nervous.
excited too, but also nervous.
Yeah, nervous, anxious.
Questions.
Yeah, they definitely have questions. All right. Well, we'll come back to this at another time. I apologize. But we'll keep this rolling. But yeah, so those feelings that they have can definitely shape how we should interact with them. And I definitely get them all at the same time. And depending on the questions or those answers that we have there of their nervousness, they're probably anxious, they're excited, they're probably some are overwhelmed, some are in shock as well. But the next steps to follow that up, that's what we're taking some kind of subtle hints. We should be watching how they answer those questions. Is it delayed? Are they excited? And all that jazz. So my follow-up to that is, what is your opening question? And I am going to put up some of the questions that I use, and we'll kind of break them down. And then we'll skip another Menti one, and then we'll keep going from there. So these questions I use a lot of the time are the same. I just kind of differ my answers up as we go. Oh, I'm out of order, but that's fine. But the types of questions that I use here, and there's many different types of questions. I just cherry pick the questions that I use consistently in a lesson, both when I'm giving directions and for when I'm interacting with students. So the first one of the questions I use is open question, and that's pretty broad. We can get whatever answer we want out of that, and usually we'll get an answer that's not, necessarily for that. I'm sure we've seen that in some real life situations. Closed questions. Usually they're very direct and to the point. Yes, no, how's the write-in? Good, cool. That's what we'll get from those questions there. Evaluative question. They're thought-provoking questions. It's a question I'm going to use to get somebody to think or reflect, and then kind of hopefully give me an answer from there. And then leading questions. It's when I don't want to always be in that task command style. So I might give them a question that's going to get them to the answer that I want rather than such of an open answer there. So I'll use leading questions a lot because I've already given them the information. Now they're going to have to reflect to come back to that. These are all the follow-ups that you see after everyone isn't the technical definition. They're just how I kind of think about it and use them in my daily routine. And there are definitely a lot more types of questions, but it's a kind of fun little wormhole to go down. So those are the different types of questions that I'll use in my lessons. And those are probably the most consistent 4 that I use. All right. Opening question. What do you do for fun? It's pretty broad, very disarming. It lets them think. If they're a little slow, you can say, oh, skiing, snowboarding, sliding on snow. You can kind of break the ice that way. What do you do for work? That one's definitely a little bit more personal, a little bit more pointed. I find if you use that when you go in, starting off with meeting somebody, they're on vacation. They usually don't want to talk about work. You get some nuts like me who love talking about work, and yeah, I'll tell you what I do for sure. But it's usually one of those that I'll wait till I'm halfway through or towards the end to figure out what people actually do. Where do you live? That's another one of those personal ones that, they're just meeting me. They don't actually want to kind of share that one. And if you're not from there, you might not know much about that place, although you can always make something up as you go. This one's kind of my favorite. How long was the ride to get here? Here is Sugarbush, so that's easy. And if somebody tells you 3 hours, we've been around long enough, you're like, oh, what's 3 hours from here? So you can give them some silly answer, or you can be like, let me guess. And now you've turned a game out of it. You've disarmed them a little bit again, and you're getting them to open up a little bit more. And you can almost fish. Oh, did you go up this road? Yeah. Did you stop at this place? And you can kind of build a rapport there. Usually it's like, oh, there's good drinking there. There's good eating there. All sorts of stuff like that. Where are you coming from? That's a little less. I kind of use it as the same part there as the one before. I like it a little better than where do you live? Because then it's not just, oh, right and to the point. What is it do you want to learn? That one, we ask somebody that a lot, and we'll get the deer in the headlights a lot of the time. They don't know. We got to kind of guide and push them that way. Or sometimes somebody will be quick and be like, oh, I want to learn this thing. Usually it's a parent when they're talking about a kid. So I try to avoid that one unless I've read it in the liner notes that it's pretty focused. This one I'm a big fan of. What is the plan today? And that one I really like because it takes me out of the equation and I give it back to them. Now they're kind of dictating what we're doing today. They're in control, and that helps them be like, oh, I have a say. I'm not just along for the ride. And some people will be like, oh, I'd like to see this or do that, or say, I have no idea. And now they're giving the control back to you as the instructor. So if you can kind of play with that control coming to you and going back, it's really going to create a more of a team dynamic or a bond with everybody rather than being like, I am the all high and mighty. Cool. So I have these questions up here, and I really like to kind of, pick and choose. If you have some better questions that you want to send me, I've been kind of fishing for them as we go. We'll share those at the end there, or maybe we'll share them in the next slide because I've decided it's a bust. And we'll go from there. But the idea behind these, they're pretty personable, yet broad and not very pointed kind of question or direct question, is that now we're making a connection. We're getting to know somebody, and it's not just like, we're doing the dating where you got the buzzer and you're only there for 5 minutes. We're not speed dating here. We're actually getting to know somebody, even though it's actually, I'm only getting to know them for about, 3 hours, full day, or an hour. And you can actually get a lot of information from this. And that's where we're going to keep going. All right. Don't use that link. And what do the answers give us? I was hinting at it here. It gives us the insight into what they're likely to do. It gives us their motivations, why they came to that lesson. Gives us their goals, whether it's long-term or short-term. And hopefully we're getting some version of common understanding. And that common understanding one I find goes a long way, whether it's for, maybe we have some similarities that we don't know of. And some similarities like, oh, maybe we're from the same state. Maybe we enjoy the same drinks, food. We've traveled on the same roads. And it's opening up that too. And that common understanding, I also find, helps us in our teaching stuff as we go through. And why is it important? And the top stuff is just a synopsis. And I really find it's important because of the models that I have at the bottom there: Gardner's, Maslow, SCARF, VAK, and the learning styles. There's a lot of stuff here. Maslow's, SCARF, I don't think I put any of that stuff on this one here, but we'll those are stuff for us to monitor our interactions and as we go through there. But I use all those questions to build off of the learning styles, VAK, which are learning preferences, and then I kind of transfer it into Gardner's because that's where we're actually getting on the same page with our students, I find. And as we're cruising through there, I know we talked a little bit about VAK and learning styles, but the learning styles, they haven't changed in years. Thinker, doer, feeler, watcher. I usually say seer. And the learning styles is how people learn, whereas VAK is the same, but it's a little bit more in depth, and that's actually how they absorb the information. So there are sensory preferences. That's actually how we're going to gain and understand the information. So there is a difference between the learning styles and VAK. So if you get VAK as a question, it's a sensory preference where, it's one of those, how does the snow taste? How's it slide? Stuff like that. That's what we're going to go through. That's going to create a different connection so somebody can refer back to it. And then we can build everything build our lessons off of it. And the learning styles, thinker, doer, feeler, watcher, we're going to use that in our directions, how we're given information and all that stuff there. And talking to somebody from answering those questions, maybe I should be able to start filling in the dots with some of this stuff. A lot of the times, if it's a beginner lesson, that's where we're going to start here. Usually, I kind of got to see them slide once or twice and then give them a direction to figure out which one of those that I find they can cruise through or attach more to, and then we go from there. But usually, if you ask them a descriptive question from above, that's where the VAK, you'll actually pull a little bit more information out of. My favorite part, I think it's next. Oh yeah, multiple intelligences. This is where I find that we can create some more commonness out of using this. And there's actually more than on the screen here, but because Gardner is actually still alive. I didn't know that. Somebody was telling me this. So his studies are still actually ongoing. And with our new smartphone era, they're actually loading in more and more. But we're going to stick to these ones for now. So in this multiple intelligences, we got musical, body kinesthetic, interpersonal, verbal linguistic, mathematical, naturalistic, intrapersonal, which is different than interpersonal, visual / spatial, and musical. Intrapersonal, that yellow one you're seeing, that's all about you. That's are you absorbing things? Are you self-reflecting and going from there? Interpersonal is kind of where we're working as a team and we're working together. And I find this important because I can actually funnel these ideas into my description. So as I get to know somebody, I would say, hey, did you feel that? Nope. All right, cool. Then you're not an intrapersonal person. Hey, as you watched Michelle ski away, did you notice both feet arc together? And you're like, yep, I noticed that. Cool. All right, maybe that person's interpersonal. They can watch somebody. They work well as a pair. And I always use like this stuff because we can do analogies. If somebody's naturalistic, hey, I want you to make big turns like you're a giant redwood tree swaying down this green pitch. So that's a pretty clear picture, right? You think somebody's swaying back and forth, so I kind of like all that stuff. If somebody's a big counter, that's pretty mathematical. It's easier to go there. And one of my other ones is like, hey, I want you to draw me a crescent moon shape or something that looks like a windshield wiper. That's the little swivel I want to see in the snow. So now we're hitting those visual people and going from there. So that's where I find that Gardner's multiple intelligences is actually pretty spot on. And it's not just in the kids world, where I did find this only in the children's manual if you're looking for this stuff. But it's pretty useful all over. What I leave out, word smart, that's somebody who's looking to actually follow how I'm talking. Maybe it's that engineer, maybe it's that analytical, maybe it's that lawyer person, but that's kind of somebody who's gonna follow in the word smart there. And then, but yeah, so that's the 7 parts of Gardner's multiple intelligences. But that's kind of where, if we start off just hammering somebody without questions, we're not going to learn much about them. Whereas if we start open questions and then slowly funnel it in, that's where we're going to actually get to pick up some of this content from Gardner's. And then we can start toning and working everything into them a little bit more. All right. And so this last slide that I got here, I got plenty of more questions. Maybe I can multitask as we go. But I know some of this, the idea behind our meeting up here is talking about people who are interested in going for their certs. So that's where I'm bringing it back to here at the end, and we'll keep it going too because I have some more we can add. But the column on the left is the teaching fundamentals, and the column on the right is the people fundamentals. And I know I went a little quick today, but out of those teaching fundamentals, that left column, if we're working through those questions, we're maybe covering some of Gardner's teaching preferences. Are we able to hit or touch on all 6 of those things at some point in time with that opening being pretty relaxed? You can give a thumb up. Maybe there's a reaction. But as we're going, but yeah, I find, if I'm opening that dialogue, I'm going to learn their long-term goals or short-term objectives. Yep, that's easy. As I get all that information from them, I have to manage that information, that activities. That's going to have me change up my descriptions when I'm talking with them. That's going to have me change up my actions, whether kind of more gamify it and cruise through things that way. That's where that's going to cruise through. I'll be able to promote play, experimentation, and exploration. I'll probably change up my exploration stuff as we go. And getting to know somebody, we're really going to hit home that facilitate the learner's ability to reflect upon experiences. A lot of the times I find as we're teaching somebody, in that lesson, we've had them for 3 hours, they're killing it. They go in for lunch, they come out and they've forgotten everything. That's because we were always there kind of chirping them a little bit and guiding them as they went. But if we can kind of use that, what we learned about them, and relate it back to that, that's something that they can always remember. So they're going to be able to reflect upon what they got going there. And getting to know somebody, we're going to have to adapt the changing need of the learner. I have all of you here. This is definitely more of a presentation style rather than a lesson per se. So I'm not doing too much adapting as I'm going through here. But if we were on snow, I'd kind of have a broad explanation, and then I'd start to funnel it down for everybody as we cruise through all this material, and then manage emotional and physical risk. That I'm going to do kind of reading more of their body language, but I'll be able to guide that a little bit more, up the ante per se, if I've gotten to know them a little bit better. Any questions on the teach side of it that I've kind of rushed through? Not so much. All right. Jumping over to the people one, column on the right there. Answering those questions, I definitely should be able to
Tom,
develop.
I have a question. Sorry, I was far away from my mute button.
You're good.
I have a leading question for you, though.
Go on.
What kind of questions are you asking that helps identify people's risk, right? I think that's a really common thing in our students, is there's a range of risk tolerance. What conversation are you having about risk, or how are you gathering information?
How am I gathering information about risk? All right, I got to follow up to that there, Joey. Like, I'm definitely watching for body language as I'm asking my questions. Are they gung-ho? Are they a little bit shy? All that stuff. Everybody see me right now? Yeah. All right, cool. I was moving around my screens. But yeah, for risk, I'm definitely watching their body language. Are they getting it there? And that body language isn't just kind of facial expressions. It's kind of, you can see them, like me right now, I'm a little bit back, a little bit more versus the group, or you might see somebody lean in. But you can also tell on their purposeful ranges of their movements. And if I'm managing risk, yeah, I'm definitely more of a, I'll take it slow and steady unless I see them actually increase the pace of what we're doing. If they increase the pace on their own, I know I can move a little bit faster. If they're asking questions and creating that engagement, then I can manage that from there as well. But that's kind of usually how I am shuffling through risk as we're going around there. But yeah. Let's see. Jump here. Jump to the people ones again. I'm sure everybody's looking at my screen. Oh gosh. How would you manage some risk there, Joey?
I mean, I will straight up ask people, once there's some foundation, like this is not like my introductory questions, but, one thing I'm measuring is like, hey, if you're a mountain biker, like, you're a mountain biker. Do you like to ride cross country or do you like to ride downhill? Right? Like, that's going to give you some insight to how risk adverse they are. Oh, I'm a cyclist. Oh, okay. Are you a road biker or a mountain biker? Oh, you like hiking. Are you like a day hiker or do you like to go backpacking? Oh, you like to go backpacking? Are you going for like treks deep in the woods or just a single overnight? Just using their other activities to measure some of that risk tolerance is great. And there's times I'll just ask, hey, how, oh, you want to ski black diamonds and work on skiing moguls or skiing groom steeps? Are you a risk taker? Do you like taking? Is that a type 1 fun for you or a type 2 fun for you? It's starting to dig in with that. But I think the risk conversation is something, especially as we work in this, a lot of the folks here are, beyond that level 2 certification realm. And as we build into teaching higher levels, it's a conversation I think we need to be a little bit more direct about, because as you're teaching levels 7, 8, 9, skiing off of places like Heaven's Gate or Castle Rock, there's more risk involved, right? And so being more direct about it is going to give you pretty good insight when you have 3 hours to build a relationship in a private lesson.
Sweet. Heck yeah. Well, guys are getting me back again.
Does anyone else have any risk comments or things that do or don't work for you?
I mean, I'm with Joey on having a conversation. Once you build that trust and relationship, it's can often come out casually about what people are most afraid of on the slope. And I think that's important to know what some of their fears are, like crowds, for example, or afraid of someone coming from behind and hitting them, and these are things that come out from students. Once you know that, then you can, find ways of facilitating their safety. Like, do you want me to ski behind you instead of in front of you? Some people prefer that to be safe. So I think that conversation is important, and to bring it up in a natural way without intimidating them about it, And you can read their body language. You can see their eyes shifting. I think those are major cues.
Even if they're wearing goggles?
You can see their eyes shifting. Like
Oh, heck yeah.
how you lift the goggles up and they're looking, or their head shifts. You can see, they're on guard. They're on guard. You can see sometimes their eyes shifting and their head shifting.
Yeah. All right. You guys want to touch on the people stuff or do something else? What do we got? Thumbs up for people?
I have a question. Can you hear me? I think you can.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of the women that I teach are women that are often put in situations by their significant others. So when you're trying to find trust and getting them comfortable, and then getting them to go ski terrain that you know they can ski, but they don't have the confidence. It's the beginning of the meeting of getting them comfortable with you, knowing that you understand their pain and suffering of that significant other, and making sure that they're confident that you would never put them in a position that they wouldn't be comfortable in. And your goal is to teach them skills so the next time they're there, they can either verbalize that they don't want to be doing those things, or they then gain those skills to be comfortable in those harder spaces.
So how or what did you do?
Some of it is just joking around with them of like, where did your husband take you when you knew you didn't want to be there? And some of it is telling anecdotal stories of other experiences, but also starting off on lower level terrain and getting them comfortable with some really basic skills and taking those same drills gradually to more and more difficult terrain. So they have the muscle memory at the lower level. So when you get them up to Heaven's Gate, they can do the same exact drill, but on real steeps, but they know what that drill is supposed to feel like. So they're no longer working on the drill, they're working on the confidence of the terrain.
Yeah, that we're giving them older stuff that they can always get back to, but then we figured out how to disarm it too. Nice. I like it.
And sometimes when it's just really, they get someplace that they're very scared, is just doing short radius turns where you tell them, follow me, stay in my track, don't look down the hill, and we'll get down there. And often that gets people down spaces that they never thought they would be able to do.
Oh yeah. Good call there, Michelle. I'm reading who you're at, and I was like, that's not Patty.
That's not what
I was gonna say, that's not Patty.
The lady was moved because my computer was having echoes.
Yeah, no worries. And I find that last one that you mentioned right there, I find it also one of those ones that we could set everybody up for success. Having somebody follow you a turn or two behind, it takes all their thinking out of the way. It helps them build a rhythm. It helps them kind of find their groove. And then you could always make some little wave or something, and then they'll pass you. And now they're in it, and they're just kind of carrying that rhythm after you. And then they'll eventually stop when they probably get to a trail crossing, or you have to zip up to them if you see them starting to cruise out of there. But it's one of those things that we can subconsciously get them to do it after, that you can sense that they were feeling it. And usually you'll sense that because they'll start creeping up on you. Sometimes that's either lack of skill and it's terrifying for the person in front, or sometimes they're actually feeling it, so they're good to go.
Also find understanding where you're stopping at the top of the steeper pitch helps a lot in those spaces too. If you you're on the top of Heaven's Gate and you go to the top of Ripcord and stand there and have a 10-minute conversation about what you're going to do, is really nerve-wracking. So you got to be further back and so that people aren't looking down the hill. Or you take the chairlift ride to discuss what you want to do, so you just get off and go.
Yes.
But understanding that the longer they're standing on top of something that they perceive as scary, and that could be a snowball for some people, but standing on top of something scary makes it worse.
Definitely. I've definitely been in places that people just froze it up and like, oops. Now I gotta start building again. So that kind of touches that first one in our people skills. Everybody's looking at my screen, right? Thumbs up. You're seeing letters again. And that's kind of what we're doing with that. Develop relationship based on trust. Through those questions, we should be able to do something. And then we're managing that as we go. Engage in meaningful two-way communication. That's pretty easy if we've had an opening conversation that's pretty open and then gotten it pretty direct, rather than, oh, what were you skiing last week? Where'd you learn? Who would you ski with? I can't do anything meaningful with those answers. Maybe I could, but it's going to take me a lot of those answers. Identify, understand, and manage your emotions and actions. This one's actually, I don't know, one of the harder things for some folks to do as we go through it, but it's definitely one of those things that we can cheat, especially in the winter, because A, we're wearing goggles, and B, we have a face mask, so maybe they can't read it. The thing that we're going to change then is our tone or our intonation. You know, if I'm going down the hill and being like, stop, 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 they're going to read that in my voice. You know, I have to be able to change that or speed up in front of them and make that move there. So figuring out how to manage your emotions, interactions, that's also something that our guests are going to feed off of and something we're going to have to play with a little bit more. And now the last one here, recognize and influence the behaviors, motivations, and emotions of others. We should definitely be doing that. It's real easy if we're starting with my questions. Kind of goes back to that question that Joey asked, how we're managing risk. You know, if I'm thinking about that, I'm definitely managing their emotions. If I'm picking the terrain, I should be doing that. If I'm getting them on their goals to where they want to be, I'm definitely influencing a little bit of that. And same with the behaviors. And one-on-one, it's pretty easy. When we have a whole group, it's definitely a little bit more to manage. But there's a lot of little subtle things that we can kind of hit. And you learn how each person ticks by having a brief conversation with them. All right. I go like this. You're seeing me again. Now, everybody's seeing everybody. Now, you guys should be seeing our Menti screen, right? Hold on. Is everybody? I can't see anybody. Give me a whoop if you can see our answers.
Yeah, we can see your screen, Doug.
Oh, hot diggity dog.
Yeah.
Perfect. So these are some of the answers that we got. Nervous, anxious, excited. And the cool part about this is the bigger words that you're seeing on the screen here is the same word that got entered a few times. So if there was more of us, there'd probably be more words, or some of the words would grow bigger and bigger. So it's kind of cool to see that everybody was answering these questions on their own and that we had a lot of the same. But yeah, definitely excited's always up there. Questioning, some scared. What does ambivalent mean? Anybody?
Non-committal.
Oh, all right. Heck yeah.
Just like, yeah, I'm here. I don't really know why, and I'm not giving you a lot of feedback, and I'm not really thrilled about it. Right? Could be
Yep.
a kid, could be whoever. Right? They're just like, yeah, I was told to show up, and somebody bought me a lesson.
Yep. So that's
Yeah, my
definitely
boyfriend made me come.
Yeah.
yeah, and those are definitely a little bit harder to get the buy-in from the student, getting some of that stuff. But we've all been there. And so then figuring out those, we should be able to manage those questions that we use a little bit more and kind of, you know, in my brain, I'm going to flip to my, oh, they don't really want to be here. I got to create some engagement, not based on this, but actually link it back at the same time. So that actually would change my structure of how I'd be going through my lesson. I'm not going to start off with, oh, we're going to do this, this, this. It's like, I'm going to find, do they find enjoyment in skiing, snowboarding, or sliding? And then we're going to start gearing it up for there. So that's where I would change it as we cruise through. But now, all right, we're stopping
Hey,
there.
Tom,
Yo,
can I ask a question about
of course.
that screen? Okay, so
You want to see
I
it
noticed
again?
they were no, I'm good. So sorry, I'm losing my voice a little bit, but so one thing I noticed, and I get caught up in this too, is I find myself getting caught up sometimes, is that was like feelings, right? We all dealt with like emotion
Mhm.
there, and especially kids, but adults, this happens too. Like, how do you feel about even backing down to, like, when you talk about Maslow, like the hierarchy of needs? They could be
Mhm.
cold, they could be hungry. Like, one of the big questions I'll ask a Blazer group, what did you eat for breakfast today? You know,
Ooh.
because they've already walked up the hill they're like they most of them come in from Boston, like walk up the hill in the morning, like, stuff like that. So you know what you're dealing with. And I think sometimes I just wanted to know how you feel about asking those type of questions where we tend to jump into like the feeling or the risk or the fear or the goals. Do you
I
think
do it
they're
all the time.
worthwhile?
Oh, heck yeah.
Okay.
Like, maybe not right away, but you start to see a change in energy or something like that. I'll do it all the time going up the carpet. And usually it's like, I've run out of things to talk about. I've only gotten my 1-word answers as I ask questions. And I'll be like, I'll burp or something. I'm like, man, my waffle isn't hitting very good. And I'll ask, oh, what'd you have for breakfast? And they'll say a piece of toast. And you're like, just a piece of toast? And you're like, oh, so now you're scrambling from there. But yeah, I'm definitely all about that. And especially if they've traveled, usually they've gone out somewhere for breakfast. And that's definitely something I don't do a lot. So it's like, oh, where'd you go? So I'm definitely a fan of what'd you have for lunch? Usually my afternoon lessons, as we start walking to our lift, that's my question to gauge. Did they have a beer at lunch? Have they eaten something? Are they full? Or, when can I count on the decline in everything? So I'm definitely a fan. And it's not intrusive as you cruise through. But yeah, so it's stuff like that we should be using as we see that interactions change. But it's definitely one of those fun ones. And if they're slow to answer, you can always make something up. Some ridiculous thing or whatever you wish that you had instead of your cup of coffee and your muffin. That bacon, egg, and cheese on the waffle at the gas station at the bottom of the road is actually pretty good. Not gonna lie. But it's stuff like that. Cool. Anybody else have a question they want to share? No? Oh, well, we're gonna have a little bit more fun. Since I've kind of figured out how to work this, guess what? I got another one of these. So give that QR code a scan if you can. And I'll figure out how to go.
I'm on my phone. What question does it ask? Because I'll prepare.
You think I remember what I wrote earlier?
No worries then. I'll wait.
I'm also figuring out how to change as I go through here.
Tom, this is the same question as the first one.
Oh, no. Thank you. Wait a second. Did I upload the same one twice? Ay. Let's see. Sorry, I got a few screens going.
All right, I got a question. I asked
Yo,
them.
of
Right?
course.
You can eyeball what kind of equipment they got, right?
Mhm.
So you know if they're in the rental shop or not. That's kind of obvious. But then you'll see people show up with equipment and be like, "Oh, is that your own stuff?"
Yeah.
Right? Did you buy those boots? You rented those? Like just kind of like trying to get a guide on if they've got halfway decent stuff. Do they own it? Have they used it for a while? Right? All that kind of stuff. Do you own your own boots? Or you rented them? Right? Just kind of understand how much they're into the sport, right? How many times they've been out. And that gives me a gauge of kind of how serious they are in terms of what they're trying to do and learn, and also what they may or may not be able to do based on the equipment that they're on, right? And it's not, I don't try to make it really obvious, but it's just kind of like asking basic questions in terms of looking at what they got. And, oh, we like those boots. Oh, those are pretty cool. How long have you had them? All this kind of standard stuff, but it gives me a gauge on the person and how interested they are. Just banter.
Yeah. Heck yeah. Ooh. Say that last word one more time.
Banter.
Oh yeah, now you're talking. And as you're,
Because it's something that's obvious, right? You can just kind of like, oh, those are cool boots. Wow, you like Solomon's? I like this one. Oh, that's kind of nice. Do you like those skis? It's just something very obvious you can talk about, but gather some information without being really kind of over the top on them.
definitely. And if their boots are staying there, that opens that question. It's like, are they comfortable?
Yeah.
Yes or no? And it's like now you're actually sharing your expertise as you're going through, and you're not kind of being the all knowing person. Got some work to do with Menti, but I'll figure it out. But yeah, that opening that gear talk as we kind of cruise through is one of those things that they're always interested, even if they're not going to buy. They might buy someday, or they'll see it for sale and be like, "Oh, my instructor said that was pretty good." As they're going, and then I actually like. Hold on, hopefully I don't mess this up. Yeah.
I think Tom just disappeared himself. That was a cool magic trick. Poof, gone. All right, well, I've had a thought. I can take over for a minute here until he comes back. I've had a thought kind of brewing in my head about this topic during the conversation. What, just because I know a lot of people here are prepping for certification this season, especially in the teaching realm, what are you going to do in an exam setting to pull off this connection of asking questions and gaining trust and that kind of thing? What have maybe what have you done if you've recently taken a Tom? I just was filling some time until you got back, asking people who maybe are going for certification or recently have gone, like, how are you building this connection? What kind of questions are you asking in an exam setting, an assessment setting, to to garner information? Because you're looking at your peers, right? Like Mike, I love your statement about looking at equipment, but everyone's going to be on the same 4 different front side carving skis at level 3 exam, right? Like pretty much. So what are we doing?
When are you doing it?
Yeah, also when is also, yeah, that's just as important.
And it's one of those things that the ed staff member wants to see it done in front of them, but it's not very normal if it's happening every time we get in front of the group. It's usually happening on a chairlift ride. I think we talked about this a little bit last time, but it's like something, can we reflect back upon it? Can you hit it in your opening statement?
I'm curious about, in those situations, often because people are coming from such different training backgrounds and also mountains. So we have the luxury of being in Vermont, but often we're going into exams with people from the southern part of our region. So if you're on a chairlift ride and you're learning about them there and then bringing it into the larger group in front of the examiner about how that I'm used to doing a trail that's 3 times longer than you are, or not sound so arrogant, but let's see how we deal with this, because, and I know I'm used to, I would say, I had never skied hunter before my exam last year or during training. And I must say, besides the beer bottles as they go up the chairlift, I was pretty impressed by the steeps. And so, that's a different experience than what we have in Vermont. So in an exam experience, it's learning about someone's differences, I think, about how we all are PSIA, but our experiences are so different where we train and how we train, which is different than having a student come up and say, hey, I don't know how to buckle my boots.
Michelle, I'm gonna challenge your question with another question. I think that's what you're doing, right? Like that's you have to gather that information. Like, how are you doing it? Like what questions are you asking and when are you asking them?
Well, the chairlift rides during exams, it's a lot of us going, wow, how did you get to this point and what have you been doing up to this point? Often I noticed that once I got to the level 3 exam, I knew a lot of the people in my space. So it was, wow, it's so great to see you. How are you? You know, what has your journey been in the last year? Because I haven't seen you, kind of thing, which makes the exam space, at least with our peers, more comfortable. But you're asking, how do I bring it up in front of the examiner? Or how do I?
Well, you sort of just answered the first part of the question. Like,
Mhm.
you know a lot of, it's a small group, right? Like, you get to know people who are going through the same process as you, which is important and awesome. So, like, let's just say you're in a level 3 assessment with all Sugarbush people, and all 5 other people are also, not just like you sort of know them, like you know them really well. So then, but the assessor, the examiner doesn't know anybody. How do you then? Yeah, how do you then show them that it builds trust and connection and understanding and all those pieces while still relying on all these things that you already know?
First, after my first level 2 ski, I swear I was never. This is why I don't take the exams in Sugarbush. But second, if I was in that space, it's more of, I think, and you could tell me wrong for all of you who have been on the examiner side, is that examiners can tell if the group of people who already know each other, if you get along, if you trust each other, and if you encourage each other while you're in that exam and help each other along. In an exam setting, being supportive and helpful to the group only comes back tenfold, I found, as I was going through that process. Success or not for myself, when I created a bond with a group of people in my exam, I only learned from that space. So going to it in that kind of thing, I don't know if that helps, but I think the group of us and just sort of another dozen or so that are at Sugarbush that have gone along the path in the last 3 or 4 years, we've gotten really good at giving each other constructive criticism, I think, and also taking the constructive criticism, which is useful in the space of an exam if we were all working together. Is that?
Yeah, I'm digging for an answer, and what I'm digging for is like, don't be afraid to preface this with like me in an exam with you, right? Like, hey, I know Michelle. I ski with her a lot in training together, and she told me that whatever flat terrain really freaks her out because there's not enough speed involved, and so we're gonna, knowing that, we're gonna take it to some flat terrain. I'm just being contradictory as possible here. Just like being able to give that preamble of like, hey, and even if it's somebody you met that day and you mine a little piece of information out of them, like if they say, oh yeah, I'm really freaked out by steep bumps and I'm, this, or steep icy bumps, and Hunter is just, it's covered in steep icy bumps if it's not groomed, right? Like, cool, so, Joey told me on the chairlift that he's freaked out about steep icy bumps, and so what we're going to do is we're going to start really slow to manage that risk, and we're going to build into it, right? And just giving that little thread of understanding is going to just convey teaching skills and people skills.
Yeah. And then I'll keep adding on to that one there. Anytime I get in front of these situations, if y'all gave me a topic that I wasn't sure of or I couldn't spit an answer out in the first 5 seconds, instead of just sitting here quietly or umming or ahhing, I usually I'll flip it around. So it's like, hey, how many of you guys consistently go ride steep icy bumps? I'm going to throw that out to the group right then and there. And if you might get one hand up, I'll raise my hand because that's where I go test my skills out because I'm a glutton for punishment. I'll go do that all the time. And you're like, cool. And then you can kind of gauge out and you can then set it up from there. It's like, hey, Mike, I'm going to pick on you. You're top of my screen. It's like, Mike, you raised your hand. You said you like to go ride steep, icy bumps. What's a move you use to get through? And I'll gauge that off of Mike. Mike has understanding of it there. And then I would fill it in with normally, and I'm going to steal this from Terry. My goal right now, we're going to ride 100 yards, and our goal is to kind of find the slide. Can you actually slide on your skis? And boom, that's where we're going to ride it there. you get down, hopefully there's some hooting and hollering and not some ahs. Ah! And you get to the next one, it's like, hey, what skills did you use to get to there? Mike may probably be able to give us a little bit more. And those people who are a little bit nervous, now you're going to start to gain a little bit of that after they, cursed you under their breath their whole way down. And you're like, oh, now we can find our slide. We're going to take that skill there, that skill from Mike's. We're going to take mine here. And we're going to make that piece together. You ride another 100 yards. Like, all right, everybody feel like they're stepping up their game a little bit, making it a little bit more easy. They're like, oh, yeah. All right, now we're going to really hide this slide. It's almost like we're Buzz Lightyear falling with style as we kind of cruise through here. But that's one way I would kind of go about it. And I gave the control to the group from the beginning. Once I got an answer, I then took control back from the group, and I started that with a pretty open-ended question, but very leading because I set the parameters. Who rides this type of terrain as they go through? Mike shot up with his hand and said it was him. And then I could kind of funnel it from there. And I was able to take control back and then give it to everybody again. And then every time I stopped, I'm kind of creating some form of discussion. I'm figuring out what's working. And then hopefully I'm pulling it from everybody there. I'm going to be generalized, but I know most people are thinking about 3 or going for their 2 or just like where they're sitting at, and that's fine. And in the level 1 setting, we're teaching to that big group. In the level 2 setting, we're teaching to the subsets of the group. So depending on how big your group is, you don't have to be individualized, but just like, oh, 2 people are kind of working on this, 2 people are working on that, and that's kind of a subset. We're just splitting the group in half. Versus at the level 3 level, your goal, and it's in the standards, is that you're teaching to the individuals in your group. So that's where, if I was doing it at the level 3, I'd kind of be picking out something for everybody. And the pieces I'm given, as I watched us find the slide, I'm going to pick out, I'm going to be doing MA. That's normal stuff. And then I'm cruising through there. So that's kind of why I'm piecing all those pieces together. But in that teach portion at the level 3, besides teaching to each individual, and we're adapting everything in the lesson, we're also enhancing that, I believe is the saying in the words, but I'll double check that. And that goes across every discipline, 1, 2, and 3. The same words change for the teach and people skills in that unified assessment form. But those are the words that change in the standard, is adapt, group, individualized, subsets. That's the stuff that's always changing. I'll get off my box.
So at the level 3 level, when you're doing that and you're asking for, so back to the icy bumps, in that conversation, because you only have 20 minutes with the group, can you do a lot of like, okay, there's 6 of us, pair out and do a Terryism, as we can, of like pair off 2 and 2, so you can give each other feedback, and then the group comes and we can talk about that. So watch your partner. What are you seeing in the partner? But you're discussing that with the group, and how are we all feeling about that? Because if you're trying to give individual feedback in a 20-minute period of time, it's hard to give 6 people individual feedback. Or is that getting way too complicated and too wordy?
No.
And too much?
That's it. Yes and no. But that pair will work as long as you are the one guiding the information and their partner isn't the one teaching them. Not gonna lie, I've never. Yeah, go.
So if you go, okay, partner, watch this person ski, they're supposed look for X while they're doing it. Boom. That's how you do it. Okay.
Yeah. So you are still controlling what they're doing, and it's also, I find it's a cheat for me as the instructor as I'm going through. I've never been a fan of pairs, but now I'm using them more, and I refer to it as a cheat because it's like, oh, hey, first partners go, switch at the tree. Hopefully I'm there. But if the partner is watching the person in front, I've taken my group of 6 and I only have to watch 3 people. Boom, we stop. I go in and I'm like, hey, you partners, what were you talking about? And where did you touch on this? So that shows I have the ownership of the knowledge of what I saw, and I'm pulling the pieces out of them. And it's like, oh, did they actually see that? Ugh, that's not really what I want. And then I can still guide the conversation rather than letting that go completely off course. And then it's like, hey, we're gonna switch and flip flop. Boom! Now I'm watching the next group of 3, and I definitely have not assessed a level 3 exam. My goal this season is to get to a few and do that. Well, not be the assessor, but be the understudy and learn the process. On the snowboard side, we are switching that level 3 process. I think Alpine still, you guys are there already.
Snowboard's ahead of Alpine in the process of switching over to.
Gotcha. Okay. So yeah, so our level 3 is completely the other way. But yeah, go ahead. Besides,
I just want to throw in something that I think everything Tom just said is really important. Like, you're utilizing the pairs, and yes, it cuts your need to give feedback in half, because only half at a time are performing, so to speak. But I'll say 2 things. One, like, don't use pairs for the sake of using pairs. If you have a good reason to use pairs, great. But don't use it just to cut the group in half, because that you have such limited time. That's not a productive use of time. And the other thing I'll say is, if you are going to make pairs, be really intentional about who you're pairing together and why. If you're working on directing pressure to the outside ski, pair somebody who's really strong at it with somebody who's not as strong at it. Or if you have, a lot of different body types in your group, you got a couple of guys who are 6'5", 6'7", and a couple people who are, right around that 5-foot mark, pair similar body types together. Or something that, if you have 2 people that are on super fast skis and everyone else is on frontside carvers, somehow have a logic to the pairs. Because if you get the question of, okay, Michelle, why did you make those pairings? You have now gotten a softball, right? Versus if they ask that question and you have no reason for what you just arbitrarily thought, oh, you two are a pair, you're next to each other, you two are a pair, you know each other. You've lost it. Everything you do at level 3 has to have a reason, right? Like, you have to, and either the reason needs to be obvious, or if they ask the question, the answer needs to be an easy, oh, I paired Joey and Mike together because Mike's so good at lengthening his outside leg through the middle of the turn, and Joey needs to work on it. Oh, great. Cool. Did it work? Yeah, I saw a change in Joey's skiing as we were skiing. Okay, great. Good work. Right? And there's some leading, especially in the level 3 teaching exam right now, there are some leading activities they're doing, right? Like, they're going to ask you to watch a skier as you ski, as you know, right? You're watching a skier ski by and you're giving an MA. And they say, great, do you have a program for that, for working on directing pressure to the outside ski? Oh, yeah, yep, I can give something. Okay, great. Now you know whatever outcome you have has to be coupled with that fundamental, right? So if you make a group of, if you have a bunch of pairs, you need to find that opportunity, because otherwise it's just a missed chance.
Pairing, as you're going through this, seems like it's something that you either get 2 people that have similar problems so they can watch each other, so they can see what the other person's body movements are, so they can see what's happening within themselves, or one person that's so much stronger than the other and whatever you're focusing on, that one can be an example to the other. Would make, from what it sounds like, in the short period of time of 20 minutes within a level 3 exam. But
I would just say, as somebody on the other side of the scorecard, it's more obvious when you pair a strong person with a developing person versus 2 people who are working on the same thing. It's like, does she think this person's good at it, or is it clear? Yeah.
And in that realm of teaching and the people, when we're doing it, our goal is to get to everybody in the group. And like we've kind of covered, it's definitely hard to do, but there's definitely more than one style of feedback. And I kind of do this all the time. And in that situation, I'll probably have a group feedback comment. And then for the one or two people who blatantly caught my eye, I'm going to touch on them. And then I'm going to change it, tweak it, and watch again. And then hopefully I'll roll into the group after seeing. I'll roll into the group, have some group feedback. Oh, hey, those turns were nice and smooth. Everybody looked pretty controlled as we went through. And then I'll be able to jump back and then, hey, I can touch on the feedback that I gave to those two specific individuals. I probably saw something in somebody else, and then I can go there. So I'm kind of taking it away from that paired setting of everybody, and I'm going a little bit more individual, but I'll open it with a pretty group-oriented feedback of something I noticed. Then I'll talk to the people specifically. Hopefully then people are kind of breaking it down as they're thinking about it, and then I'll give my next direction. And hopefully that next direction will build or touch or change the skill as they're going through. And hopefully it's kind of in line with what I gave those previous individuals. So that's kind of a different version of it. And I'm going back to being that big group oriented lesson versus kind of having them run in pairs. But that's one way I can affect everybody's riding or skiing, and I'm affecting it on the broad and then funneling it down. And whether I'm saying, hey, Amanda and Mary, you're doing it this time, or I'll say to prove that I'm actually watching everybody and saying, hey, that was a great job. It's more like, hey, Amanda, Mike, you nailed that left turn and all those bumps there. As you're cruising through, let's say you can make that same nice sweeping as you're coming to that right turn as well. But even making that observation, that shows that I'm teaching in that I've watched, and even though I'm giving a positive feedback, I'm not really doing a instructive feedback. They're actually getting something out of me just making that observation. They might be like, oh, heck yeah, that left turn is always my favorite, and I do the right. But you telling them that the left is good and why the left is good, maybe they can bring it in there. Or it also kind of helps you stem things if you see their facial expressions change a little bit. So that's kind of getting away from that group, pairing people up, getting out of that reciprocal and kind of giving it more as we're cruising through. And I'm sure everybody's skied with Terry and everybody's watched him do that. And if you have not noticed it, give it a watch. That's what I notice all the time when I'm kind of tagging along with y'all. Lower my hand. What do you got there, Joey? What do you think?
Yeah, I like the topic, Tom. I think it's something that it's a little bit more drilled down to what we did last week, right? A little bit more focused on a piece of that connection model, which I really like. I think that as we go through the next, I can't believe we're through 2 of 6 already. As we go through the next 4 sessions, we'll start to probably drill down more on specific topics versus being so general, because I think it's I think everyone who reached out said it up from 2 weeks ago's call is like, it's great to get the brain going, because in the beginning of the call we're all a little bit quiet and reserved and like, hey, I got to get my brain jump started. And towards the end of the conversation here now, it's coming out as more conversation, right? And people are starting to get this muscle working a little more. I like it. Does anyone have any closing questions or thoughts or topic requests or anything like that for the next couple of weeks?
Question. I think one of the weeks you're looking at is Yom Kippur or Rosh Hashanah.